I was very OCD and type A about how I wanted the store run, how I wanted things handled. I believe there were only 4 stores in the whole system out of about 90 stores at the time that ranked in the top 10. We were in the top 5% of all run stores. Now, our house took a long time to sell. It took like a year to sell because we were up in the mountains, 5 acres. It was like a kind of a very unique buy, and we had it overpriced. So I decided that, well, since we're going to move across the country and I'm going to have to leave my job anyways, let me just leave the job, oversee the store getting built and getting it up and running properly. So that's what I did. So this is where the caveat comes in, tying this back to making passive income. So fast forward a year after that of opening the location, and I'll tell you what went into that is, yes, okay, eventually I wound up becoming a passive owner, but here's what it took. So I did not need to oversee the construction because that was pretty much turnkey. We had a great general contractor who had built 50 of our same exact stores over the year, and he owned one too. So that I didn't really need to build out, but I was full-time ready to rock and roll overseeing the business as we went and got open. So I personally hired all of the staff in the beginning. I personally interviewed all of them. I personally reviewed all of the resumes. And that first couple weeks, the first week of being in the store, I was in there from open to close. So we were opening at 7 a.m., closing at, I think, 8 p.m. And so I was there at, 6 a.m., leaving at 9 p.m. So what is that? 12, like 13, 15-hour days. That was the first week, right? Like I was there all the time. And here's the thing. For folks that are experienced operators, like I didn't need to do that. That was the interesting part. I didn't need to do that, but I had never run a business like this before. I had never hired a manager. I'd never been in the food business. So I really didn't know exactly what I was doing, but this helped me to learn the business. So then when I'm managing it from across the country later on, I know how things are supposed to go. And so eventually some of the shift leaders that I hired promoted one to manager, promoted one assistant manager. And I would say within about a month or so, like I'd go play golf during the day. Like I wasn't there every hour, but I was very actively involved in the store. I was going to the store every day. Sometimes I would just sit in the back of the store and work just so my presence could be there. But I was on the staff in the operations, like white, as my mom would say, like white on rice. And so I was very OCD in type A about how I wanted the store run, how I wanted things handled. And so what happened was we were top 10 in the franchise system in mystery shops. We were top 10 in audits by the franchisor. And I believe there were only 4 stores in the whole system out of about 90 stores at the time that ranked in the top 10 for both of those categories. So operationally, we were in the top 5% of all run stores. Now, we weren't in the top yet in sales because you had stores that had been open 10 years, right? And we were open just, 6 months. But even that, just 6 months later, because of some of the things we had done in that store, the franchisor, and just because of how engaged I was, they asked me to be on the top franchisee panel at our annual conference, which is crazy. I hadn't owned the store more than 6 months, so that was pretty cool. And so about 8-9 months later, we moved to Florida, and that's when that began running the store semi-absentee. And so I slowly gave my manager more and more responsibilities and duties. Like in the beginning, he didn't do payroll. I still did payroll, right? Like that was something I still oversaw. Eventually, he did payroll. He did all the hiring and firing. They would just have to send me the new employee onboarding paperwork. But like we had a system, we had a checklist, but it took me being very active and involved in the store for that first 8 months or so. And I don't know that if I would have done that I would have been able to run it passively. The other thing is some businesses are just probably not a passive type business. The food business is probably one of the simpler businesses to run from a passive perspective, right? And I think the problem that most people face is that what happens is right now is that you're thinking, I want to own a franchise passively, and the franchisor is selling you that dream, and it's a mismatch of expectations, right? You see where I'm going with this? Because you're thinking, I want to go in and work as little as possible and make as much money as possible. And it's just probably not going to happen that way in the beginning. It takes time. It takes time. I say it takes about 3 years for a business to reach its maturity. And if you've never run a business before, if you've never hired a manager and a team and led them in that way, or oversaw the looking at KPIs and scorecards and doing reviews, like if you don't have that under your belt, it's going to be really hard to run a business passively. And then if you don't have the experience of knowing what should happen in the business and how the different roles work overall, you don't know when things are going wrong. You don't know what mistakes to look for. You sort of don't know when things are going well. That's when people get in trouble and they don't know what's happening in their business. If you enjoyed this short clip from the podcast, you can check out another short clip right here. Or if you want to watch the full episode of this podcast, you can watch that here. And remember, knowledge is not power. It's applied knowledge that's power. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.